Funding for Lawmakers comes from
the University of West Georgia in Carrollton, ensuring a better life for Georgians in the 21st century. More than 100 programs of study prepare students for successful careers in the critical professions of education and nursing, as well as business and the liberal arts. The Georgia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of Georgia's business community, over 4,000 members strong, working with lawmakers for over 90 years to make sure that our state remains a place where companies thrive.
And by supporters of Georgia Public Broadcasting. Thank you.
Coming up on Lawmakers, a plan to create a special local tax to ease Georgia's transportation problems. Property owners may be in danger of losing their homestead tax relief grant. And a House committee hears testimony on the recent peanut butter recall. Those stories and more are coming up next.
Live from Atlanta, this is Lawmakers. Here are your anchors, Nwandi Lawson and David Zelski.
Hello everyone. Also on tonight's broadcast, GPB Radio's Augusta Bureau Chief tells us how that community is bracing for the possible repeal of the homeowners tax relief grant.
And a state of technology forecast for Georgia. But first, our top story tonight, a bill that could create an additional 1% sales tax for regional transportation projects clears committee. A measure to help ease congestion in the state's metro area died in the final moments of the 2008 legislative session. Already this year, lawmakers are hard at work trying to hammer out a deal everyone can agree upon. Lawmakers Valarie Edwards is live at the Capitol with more on that story. Valarie.
In Nwandi, we all remember Sine Die 2008. Moments before midnight, Senator Jeff Mullis of Chickamauga took to the well to implore his colleagues to support a proposed T-SPLOST referendum to fund regional transportation improvement. Let's take a look back.
Step up to the plate, ladies and gentlemen, and we need your help tonight. This is a responsible measure, and tonight is your duty to do the right thing to help the people of Georgia.
And as you'll recall, the measure failed in the Senate by 3 votes. Now fast forward to 2009, and the Senate Transportation Committee has hit the ground running, so to speak. Senate Bill 39, sponsored by Republican Jeff Mullis of Chickamauga, provides for a 1% local optional sales tax to fund regional transportation projects throughout the state. This time around, Mullis says he feels confident the measure will go the distance.
Well, look, last year we found ourselves at the end of the session trying to get a consensus bill together. This year we're way ahead of schedule. The Senate is 3 weeks ahead in passing their bill out so that we can work with the House as soon as they pass theirs to come together early. That's the key to our success this time.
One other measure which passed the Senate Transportation Committee earlier today gives the state's Road and Tollway Authority the power to enter into contracts with the Department of Transportation. SB 19, sponsored by Senator David Schaefer of Gwinnett County, is an attempt to resolve conflicting constitutional powers and free up money for road construction projects.
Well, the Department of Transportation has begun to interpret a 1974 Attorney General's opinion to prohibit multi-year construction contracts. Well, of course, most road projects are multi-year in nature, and so that is an obstacle to moving forward with our transportation plans. What this bill does is overcome that concern by relying on a different section of the Constitution dealing with intergovernmental agreements to allow the state Road and Tollway Authority to enter into agreements with the Department of Transportation to identify future funding sources and allow those multi-year contracts to be let.
One final thing, I asked Senator Mullis how he felt taxpayers would respond to his proposal. The senator replied that if you've ever been stuck in metro traffic, you're already paying a high price. Senate Bill 39 will likely be in rules by the end of this week and could go before the full Senate for a vote as early as Monday of next week. Reporting live, I'm Valarie Edwards.
Okay, thanks for that report, Valarie. Well, Senator George Hooks took the well this morning to announce ethics legislation that he plans to drop in the near future. He states that this nonpartisan effort aims at closing a loophole when it comes to campaign contributions, a loophole that actually surfaced recently in Illinois.
And let me tell you what led to this. I personally am appalled, like many of you and many Georgians, to see what is going on in the state of Illinois. And my heart goes out to our colleagues up in the state of Illinois and the state Senate and their trial that is going on this morning as we speak. But it was pointed out to me, correctly so, by editorial writers and other individuals that we've got a lot of holes in our own house. And before we become too holier than thou, we need to take care of our own business and correct some of the things that we find that are not good here. So what I've done is I had the fine Senate research staff write the state of Illinois, and they sent me a copy of their law that they passed unanimously about campaign contributions that their governor vetoed. Now, it's hard for me to imagine a governor vetoing a bill that passes the House and Senate unanimously, but he did. That one, frankly, was a different route that I chose to take with ours. Ours, and this, like I say, I hope is the first of several that will correct some loopholes that we found in our own system. This one basically requires that any group or individual that has a contract with the state of Georgia and individuals within state government, that they report a campaign contribution within 2 working days or business days of that contribution.
Now, Senator Hooks adds that he hopes to drop this legislation as soon as tomorrow, but wants to give every senator a chance to sign on first.
Homeowners who have already paid their property taxes for 2008 may now have to write another check to the state. Lawmakers Minoo Hosseini is live at the Capitol with that story. Minoo.
Governor Perdue recently recommended that state legislators cut the homeowners tax relief grant from the budget, a cut that would save the state almost $429 million, but could cost homeowners.
Requires the state government to spend money. It is actually a budget item. We spend that money. It shows up on the budget as an expenditure. We write a check to the local governments, and the local governments then turn that money through the form of a tax relief on a homeowner's tax bill. So it's a very convoluted way to administer tax relief. And our challenge this year is making sure that we find the revenue to have that money go back to the local governments as we promised them last year.
The homeowners tax relief grant, which was initiated by Governor Roy Barnes almost 10 years ago, has saved individuals between $200 and $300 per year on their property taxes. But Governor Perdue's floor leader, Representative Jim Cole, says the state can no longer afford it.
Governor Perdue he's let it be known very clearly to the Senate and House leaders that, listen, if you can find it, I'm in support of funding it this year, but I've combed through this budget, I've looked, I've tried to find it. It's tough for me, but, listen, if you can find it, I'll be as happy as anybody.
But Senator Chip Rogers is more optimistic for the grant.
What the legislature has said at both the House and the Senate is that we would like now to have the opportunity to find that $428 million so that we can go ahead and fund what we passed last year. And I think that's our challenge, is coming up with the $428 million that the governor did not include his budget. And since the governor sets the revenue estimate, we're going to have to find cuts elsewhere in the budget. He presented us with a balanced budget, as he always does. We're going to have to cut something else to find the $428 million to make sure we fully fund HTRG for 2009.
The prospect of eliminating the grant could place pressure on local governments to save their homeowners from having to write a second check to the state for their property tax. Reporting live, I'm Minoo Hosseini for Lawmakers.
Thanks so much, Minoo. In other news, one House Democrat says that the homestead exemption should be preserved in the state constitution. Representative Winfred Dukes is proposing a referendum asking voters to decide, shall the Constitution of Georgia be amended so as to provide that the General Assembly shall have the duty to appropriate funds each year to provide homeowners tax relief grants with a benefit equivalent to a homestead exemption not less than $8,000 and not more than $18,000 of the assessed value of a taxpayer's homestead or the taxpayer's ad valorem property tax liability on the homestead, whichever is lower. Now, Representative Dukes says voters, not lawmakers, should decide whether to continue these grants.
It should not be to the whim of a governor or a legislature to decide whether or not the homeowners of the state are in fact deserving of property tax relief.
Representative Dukes dismisses the governor's assertion that the additional property tax money is needed to close the budget shortfall.
We have given tax breaks to everybody under the sun here under the Gold Dome. Everybody who has had a well-placed lobbyist, who have come down and lobbied on behalf of special interests, and they have actually put their hands into the state's coffers and drawn down quite a bit of the money in the form of tax relief.
Representative Dukes says the resolution will be introduced in the House tomorrow. And now for coverage of the state budget crisis from another perspective, we are going to go to GPB radio reporter because they are this week producing a report called The Money Crunch. That's a series of reports about how budget cuts are impacting different areas of the state. Earlier, I asked Augusta Bureau Chief Mary Ellen Cheatham how Columbia County is taking the news that property tax grants may be a thing of the past.
I spoke with one Columbia County commissioner who says it's the consensus among his commission that their residents will not pay the taxes, no matter what, will not pay for that credit. That commission will do everything it can to prevent the taxpayers from having to pick up this extra burden. Again, losing the grant would potentially be a political setback for elected county commissioners, even though the state would be cutting this credit. The tax bills come out with the county letterhead. They come from the county. So homeowners perceive that as the county commissioners raising their taxes, even though that's not happening. Now, the Columbia County Commission, like many others in the state, considered absorbing the cost themselves. It was about $4 million in Columbia County. Despite their own budget cuts, they had gone so far in its budget process to even direct each of the county agencies to make some cuts to keep from passing the tax on the homeowners. But the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia is instructing its members that this may be illegal. The commissioner in Columbia County also brought up the possibility of reducing its millage rate. That would also mean less taxes, extra money in the hands of taxpayers to cover that extra tax from the state. But again, the association says that's not legal. Governor Perdue, meanwhile, discounts the association's assertion.
Well, Mary Ellen, we look forward to the rest of your report tomorrow night. Mary Ellen Cheatham is the Augusta Bureau Chief for Georgia Public Broadcasting Radio. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
The Department of Agriculture is pushing for new legislation after the investigation of a Georgia peanut plant revealed they had knowingly shipped peanut products containing salmonella. Lawmakers Tiana Fernandez joins us live with the latest. Tiana.
Yes, David, the Food and Drug Administration found that on 12 separate occasions since June of 2007, the Peanut Corporation of America in Blakely, Georgia had tested its own products and found salmonella. Since PCA is not required to report these findings to the state, it was able to release its contaminated products to the public.
You have a company that actually knows they have a problem and doesn't make us aware of it. So I think the law change that Commissioner Irving is urging will at least lay out in the law that they have to make those results available.
Obtaining the necessary information from PCA was not easy. The FDA had to invoke a Bioterrorism Act, which required the plant to release all of its records within 24 hours. Commissioner Tommy Irving of the Georgia Department of Agriculture believes there was an easier solution.
If they had notified us the first time they knew they had a problem, you never would have had a problem.
The Department of Agriculture hopes enacting a law would prevent future outbreaks.
It is sad if it requires a law to do that. Personal responsibility, accountability, and concern for the public and the consumers of your product ought to drive you to do that without the need for legislation.
Consumers are strongly advised to visit FDA.org or peanutsusa.com for a complete list of food products affected by the recall. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Tiana Fernandez.
Okay, thanks for that report, Tiana. Well, Senator Gloria Butler took a point of personal privilege this morning to express her concern with Governor Perdue's proposal for hospital provider fees. Perdue expects this measure to help fill a large gap in the state's $2.2 billion budget shortfall.
We just need to call it what it is. We can just call it a sick tax, because this is a pass-through ultimately that will burden the patient. It only makes exorbitant hospital bills harder to pay. It would also sink those hospitals on the edge of failure instead of helping them. What about hospitals that do not offer trauma care? This sick tax ends up hurting them. They would be paying out but not receiving benefits like other larger, affluent urban hospitals, which leads to closing of hospitals, which means the loss of healthcare jobs. Our unemployment is already 8.1%. We are not exempt, you know. We are suffering just like all other states. We're suffering economically and cannot afford to overlook medical care needs. Hospitals are already overburdened. The governor asks you, do not rush into a short-sighted cut that would have long-term consequences for Georgia's most needy. What he neglected to mention was that in order to do so, you must adamantly oppose this sick tax proposal in order to protect the lives of Georgians.
Now, there are 4 Georgia colleges, including 2 historic black colleges, that Senator Seth Harp believes should be combined into 2 in an effort to save money. Harp says the time is right for this merger and adds that the Board of Regents need to understand how critical the financial situation is becoming.
Directed to the Board of Regents and requesting that they consider the merger of Savannah State University with Armstrong Atlantic and Albany State University with Darton College. I think most folks in this room that attended the appropriation meetings last week may share what I felt in the fact that I don't think the Chancellor or the Regents are really coming to the table and appreciating the economic crisis that we are facing and we are involved in. I offer this resolution because I believe that by merging these 2 white schools into these 2 historically black schools, we can take and make lemonade out of lemons. My goal is simply to make the 2 historically black schools survivable and make them such that they are supported by their local communities. In 1968 and 1969, I lived in Albany, Georgia, and I'm very, very familiar with how Darton grew and prospered. And the simple fact of the matter is Albany State was relegated to a river bottom and Darton was created in a very white neighborhood on the other side of the community. Plain and simple. This was a segregation academy to perpetuate segregation in our state. I think it's time now that we, with the power of the budget, urge the regents to do the right thing and close this chapter.
Over in the House, Representative Steve Davis wants to offer high school students 3 ways for how they can earn a diploma. He went to the well this morning to urge support for his legislation.
I've got a nice little gem of a bill here that will fix some things that I believe are wronged. Last year, the state school board eliminated the vocational diploma for all rising 9th graders and basically did a one-size-fit-all graduation requirement. And I was adamantly opposed to it at the time. I sent letters to all of the school board members as well as the superintendent opposing that. They did it anyways. I've got a little bill here that will actually put the graduation requirements in 3-tier form, a general diploma, a vocational diploma, as well as a college prep diploma, and put it in law. And it's got several other aspects to it, including personal finance classes as well as community service.
Davis introduced House Bill 215 to create the 3-tier diploma system today.
We invite you to check out GPB's online resources at gpb.org/lawmakers. Find the latest from GPB's radio news team and watch Lawmakers online. All that and more at gpb.org/lawmakers. We invite you to visit that site and vote in our legislative issue poll.
And now we have our first online poll results for you. When asked, do you favor an additional $1 tax on tobacco products? 73% of the respondents said yes, 27% said no. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, only 11 people participated in our first online poll. So please visit gpb.org/lawmakers to vote in the next poll.
The Technology Association of Georgia told the Senate Science and Technology Committee that the state has work to do when it comes to supporting that industry. Yesterday, the committee heard a presentation on the state of technology in Georgia by TAG President Tino Mantella. Lawmakers' Emily Banks has more.
Mantella said he'd like to see Georgia become one of the top 5 states in the technology industry. Atlanta already holds 123,000 technology jobs, making the city 10th in the nation.
Technology is obviously extremely important to the state. It's our 5th, from a gross product standpoint, it's our 5th industry, and it's really been a stalwart. And if you think about the future, technology is going to be something that we need to consider in terms of investment.
The state leads in telecommunications and software, but lacks serial entrepreneurs, venture capital, and support from the state, Mantella told the committee.
The only state that is moving more aggressively in respect to some of these growth areas is Texas. And Texas has made about a $300 million investment in science and technology. And I believe that that's one of the reasons why you're seeing Texas take a big spike here in respect to technology.
Becoming a top 5 state in science and technology won't be easy because of limited support of entrepreneurs, low science and technology scores in schools, and regional competition from states that have well-funded programs, Mantella said. But he offered suggestions on how to overcome those obstacles and reach that top 5 goal.
We would encourage consideration of a technology and science study committee that can look at the issue to how to support innovation, entrepreneurship, and we've actually, there's a legislation that's being developed around science, innovation, technology, and engineering. We're calling it SITE. Work towards economic development with a tech focus and include investment in technology in any short-term economic stimulus package.
Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Emily Banks.
Senator Cecil Staten, the committee's chairman, also said the committee would consider TAG's suggestions, especially one creating a study committee that might find ways to bolster Georgia's economy.
Governor Sonny Perdue wants to make sure that Georgians have access to the flu vaccine. Representative Jimmy Pruitt, one of the governor's floor leaders in the House, introduced House Bill 217 today. The Access to Flu Vaccines Act would allow pharmacists and registered nurses to dispense flu shots without an individual doctor's prescription. Physicians would still have to enter into a protocol agreement with the pharmacist or nurse, but the governor says the standing order could make it easier for Georgians to receive their yearly flu shot.
The House State Institutions and Properties Committee received an update on the Jekyll Island Authority today. A representative from the Jekyll Island Authority said the island has seen a steady decline in visitation since the late 1980s. He said a number of revitalization projects which have already begun should help bring more visitors to the island and would not encroach on undeveloped land.
As you know, the Jekyll Island Authority is budgetarily self-sustaining. And any excess revenue that we're able to generate, any profit that we're able to generate is reinvested in the island through capital outlays. Over the years, as visitation and revenue has been constrained, we've been limited in our ability to keep up the public portions of the state park. So through revitalization, what this chart shows is that we can start allocating more money back to the public use areas of the island, including the Historic Landmark District, which is in great need of additional capital investment. The red part of those charts shows the debt service that would be paid on the bonds that have been committed in last year's budget, and in the same way, the debt on the bonds that are in this year's proposed budget would be paid back, again, entirely by the Jekyll Island Authority through revenue generated by revitalization.
Now, more than 65% of the island would always remain undeveloped, Garvey said. The 5 new redevelopment projects use 1.7 acres of undeveloped land to create a new road. We'll have more information on this story tomorrow on Lawmakers.
In his second legislative week since returning from a tour of duty in Iraq, Representative Doug Collins presented photos and video of his squadron and stories of the men and women with whom he served.
I didn't think it would change me. I've seen a lot. I have to say, after serving with these young men and women, I am changed. I'll never be the same. Not because of necessarily war and all that it encourages and all that happens and all that I have seen, but what I'm encouraged about is young men and young women who do a job. They do it well. And I just wanted again to say thank you and to tell the story, to come home and tell the story that you may not hear in the regular news or wherever it may be, but it's real people doing real work and giving of themselves.
It's fair to say that Georgia Tech had a better football season than most people expected. The writers sure agreed with that, naming Tech's running back Jonathan Dwyer Atlantic Coast Conference Player of the Year and head coach Paul Johnson the National Coach of the Year. They were both honored in the House and Senate this morning with a resolution. Senate Majority Leader Chip Rogers had the honor today of introducing them to the Senate chamber.
We had a great year. Most people know that, so I'm not going to go through that again. I just go home and watch my TiVo'd Georgia game.
Let me just say thank you for the resolution. It's been a real privilege to have a chance to coach the young men at Georgia Tech this past season. And we're excited about the future, and we appreciate all the support from everyone here, and are looking forward to a long and bright future at Georgia Tech. So thank you.
Just to go off what Coach Johnson said, we at Georgia Tech appreciate all the support that the state of Georgia and the Georgia Tech family has given us, and we're working hard and trying to do what we can to resolve from the bowl game and do better this next season, and try to win a national championship and ACC championship. So we're out here working hard and trying to represent for the state of Georgia. Thank you.
Well said. Well said.
Now, the good news for Tech fans is that both Dwyer and Coach Johnson will be back next year, but I guess the same can't be said for Stafford and Moreno over in Athens.
You had to get that in. Coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, our leadership interview series begins with Representative DuBose Porter, the House Democratic leader, and the Joint Commission on the Sexual Exploitation of Minors releases its recommendation for legislation. We'll have those stories and more tomorrow on Lawmakers at 7. If you missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, please tune in tomorrow morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. on GPB or 7 a.m. on GPB Knowledge. You can also keep up with all the action under the Gold Dome daily on your local GPB radio station during Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and Georgia Gazette. Coming up next here on GPB Television, Georgia Traveler. Tonight's episode features the Northwest Mountains. That's coming up next here on GPB.
Look forward to that. And that is our broadcast for this, the 8th legislative day of the 2009 session of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm David Zelski.
And I'm Nwandi Lawson. Please join us tomorrow at 7 p.m. for Lawmakers. Good night.
Good night.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.